Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth, they called it. The third planet from a yellow star that the locals named Sol. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease as he reviewed the files. One more time. The species was young. Very young. They had only figured out how to travel faster than light about 200 years ago. Their ships were crude things powered by fusion reactors that barely worked. Most of their energy came from burning dead plants and splitting atoms. They still fought wars with each other over resources and invisible lines drawn on maps. Perfect. Candidates for integration into the Galactic Confederation. Zethkar had done this dance 847 times before. Every species followed the same pattern. First came shock at meeting aliens. Then fear when they saw the size and power of Confederation ships. Finally, acceptance when they realized they had no choice but to join. The process was always the same. Show up with enough firepower to glass their homeworld. Explain the benefits of Confederation membership. Accept their surrender. Install a governing council. Move on to the next primitive world. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet, his communications officer reported. The young Carlton's scales shifted from blue to purple, showing excitement. This was probably her first integration mission. Put it through, Zethkar ordered. The main screen changed to show a human face. The creature had pale skin, dark hair, and two small eyes set close together. It wore some kind of formal clothing in black and white. Behind it, Zethkar could see other humans moving around what looked like a primitive command center. "Welcome to Earth," the human said in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "I am Secretary General Chun of the United Earth Government. We have been expecting you." Zethkar leaned back in his command chair. At least they spoke the common tongue. That would make things easier. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Confederation Survey Fleet. Your species has been selected for integration into our organization. This is a great honor." The human's face didn't change expression. "We appreciate the offer, Commander. However, after careful consideration, we must respectfully decline." The bridge went quiet. Zethkar's second pair of arms stopped moving over his controls. In 847 previous integrations, no species had ever said no. They usually begged for membership by this point. "I'm sorry," Zethkar said slowly. "Perhaps the translation matrix is malfunctioning. Did you just refuse Confederation membership?" "Yes, we did," Secretary General Chun replied calmly. "Earth wishes to remain independent. We would be happy to establish trade relations or sign non-aggression pacts, but we have no interest in joining your confederation." Zethkar looked around his bridge. His officers stared back at him with confused expressions. This had never happened before. The integration protocols didn't even have a section covering species that said no. "Secretary General Chen," Zethkar said, trying to keep his voice patient. "I don't think you understand. This is not a request. Every spacefaring species in this galaxy is part of the Confederation. It is the natural order of things." The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We understand perfectly, Commander. We know about your other 847 member species. We know how you integrate new worlds. We know about your expansion zones and your quotas. We also know that you've never met a species quite like us." The bridge temperatures seemed to drop. How did this primitive species know classified information about Confederation operations? Their intelligence network shouldn't be advanced enough to gather that kind of data. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "should I charge the main batteries?" Zethkar held up one hand. There was something about the human's confidence that bothered him. No species facing a Confederation fleet should be this calm. "Mr. Chun, Zethkar said. Look at your screens. Look at our ships. We have enough firepower to turn your entire planet into molten rock. Do you really think you can resist the full might of the Confederation? The human's smile grew wider. Commander, we don't want to fight you. Violence should always be the last option. But if you insist on forcing us to join your Confederation against our will, then yes. We think we can resist you. Impossible, Zethkar's science officer muttered. Their technology level is barely above steam and metal. They shouldn't even be able to damage our shields. Secretary General Chun seemed to hear the comment through the communication link. You're right about our official technology level. We've been very careful to only show you what we wanted you to see. Just like we've been careful to let you think you discovered us by accident. Cold fear began to crawl up Zethkar's spine. What are you saying? We've been watching your expansion for over 1,000 years, Commander. We've seen how you operate. We've studied your technology, your tactics, your politics. We know everything about you. The question is, how much do you really know about us? The communication screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing the primitive command center, it now displayed technical schematics, weapon designs, ship blueprints, energy calculations that made Zethkar, a science officer, gasp in shock. These specifications, the human continued, represent a small sample of our actual capabilities. We're sharing them so you understand that our refusal isn't based on ignorance or bravado. We simply don't want to join your club. Zethkar stared at the data scrolling across his screen. If these numbers were accurate, human technology was centuries ahead of anything in the Confederation. But that was impossible. They had watched humanity develop. They had seen their crude ships and primitive weapons. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Perhaps, Secretary General Chun replied. There's only one way to find out for certain. We're going to give you a choice, Commander. You can turn your ships around and leave our system. Or you can try to force integration and discover whether we're bluffing or not. And if we choose to leave, then in 6 months we'll reopen communications. We'll discuss trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. We might even share some of our technology with species that interest us. But we will never, under any circumstances, accept Confederation membership. Zethkar felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Every instinct told him this was a trick. No primitive species could match Confederation military power. But something in the human's voice suggested that forcing the issue would be a mistake. 6 months, he said finally. 6 months, the human confirmed. Use that time wisely, Commander. Learn about us. Study our history. Try to understand why we value independence so highly. When we meet again, you'll have all the information you need to make an informed decision. The communication ended. Zethkar stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned to his navigation officer. Set course for the edge of the system. We'll observe from a safe distance and report back to command. As his fleet moved away from Earth, Zethkar couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made contact with something far more dangerous than any primitive species had a right to be. Admiral Korthik read Commander Zethkar's report for the 5th time, his mandibles clicking with irritation. 6 months had passed since first contact with the humans, and the Confederation Council was demanding action. No species was allowed to refuse integration. It set a dangerous precedent. Sir, his intelligence officer called from across the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion. We're receiving updates from the surveillance probes around Sol System. Korthik's 3 eyes focused on the data streaming across his personal display. What he saw made no sense. Massive energy signatures were radiating from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Industrial-scale construction was happening at dozens of locations simultaneously. This can't be right, he muttered. Run a full diagnostic on the probe sensors. Already completed, sir. The readings are accurate. Whatever they're building out there, it's bigger than anything in our databases. Korthik stood from his command throne and walked to the main holographic display. The Sol system appeared in 3 dimensions, with thousands of red dots marking human activity. Ships moved between asteroids like busy insects, carrying materials and energy in quantities that defied explanation. How is this possible? His science advisor asked. 6 months ago, their largest ships were barely a kilometer long. These construction sites suggest vessels 10 times that size. The Admiral's comm system chimed. A message from Confederation High Command appeared on his personal screen. The orders were clear and direct. Proceed to Sol system immediately. Demonstrate overwhelming force and complete integration of the human species. No delays, no negotiations, no exceptions. Signal the fleet, Korthik ordered. All ships are to prepare for departure. We jump in 1 hour. The Confederation Enforcement Fleet was a sight that had broken the will of 1,000 species. 15 dreadnoughts, each 5 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to sterilize a continent. 50 heavy cruisers that could crack moons. 200 destroyers and frigates for escort duty. It was the largest military force the Confederation had assembled in over a century. The jump to Sol system took 3 days. When they arrived at the edge of human space, Korthik expected to find the same crude fusion-powered ships that had greeted Zethkar 6 months earlier. Instead, his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Earth's defense grid was completely powered down. No shields, no weapons, no ships in defensive positions. The planet sat naked and vulnerable, as if inviting attack. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth, his communications officer reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing the same human they had seen in Zethkar's recordings. Secretary General Chun looked older now, with gray streaking his dark hair. But his eyes held the same calm confidence that had unsettled the survey commander. Admiral Korthik, Chun said, somehow knowing exactly who he was addressing. Welcome to Sol system. We've been preparing for your arrival. Oguri. Secretary General Chun, Korthik replied formally. By order of the Galactic Confederation Council, this system and all its inhabitants are now under Confederation authority. Power down all vessels and prepare to receive integration teams. The human smiled that same unsettling smile. We appreciate the offer, Admiral. But as we told Commander Zethkar 6 months ago, we're not interested in joining your organization. However, we are ready to demonstrate why. Demonstrate? Korthik's confusion was clear in his voice. Your defense grid is offline. Your ships are nowhere to be seen. What exactly are you planning to demonstrate? Patience, Admiral. You'll understand in a moment. The communication ended. Korthik stared at the blank screen, then turned to his tactical officer. Begin the advance. All ships maintain formation. Target Earth's major population centers, but don't fire unless I give the order. The massive fleet began moving toward the inner system. Earth grew larger on their screens, still showing no signs of resistance. Korthik began to relax. Perhaps the humans had finally come to their senses and realized the futility of resistance. That's when his sensor officer screamed, Admiral. Massive. Gravitational anomaly detected. Something's coming in fast from the outer system. The main display shifted to show the space between Jupiter and Saturn. At first, there was nothing visible except the normal pattern of gas giant moons and debris. Then space itself seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. What emerged from behind, Jupiter's bulk, defied everything Korthik thought he knew about physics and engineering. The vessel was enormous, easily 50 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was black as space itself, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship's design was unlike anything in Confederation databases, with flowing organic curves, mixed with angular geometric sections that hurt to look at directly. Classification unknown, his computer announced in a voice that somehow sounded confused. Hull composition unidentifiable. Propulsion system not detected. Mass readings inconsistent with visual size estimates. That's impossible, Korthik whispered. Nothing that large could move that fast without tearing itself apart. But the impossible ship was accelerating toward them at speeds that violated basic laws of physics. No reaction drives were visible. No energy signatures indicated conventional propulsion. The massive vessel simply moved as if space itself was bending around it. "Sir, we're receiving identification codes," his communications officer reported. "The vessel identifies itself as Use Ragnarok, registry designation Titan Class 001. Titan Class? Korthik had never heard the designation before. What does that mean? His answer came in the form of another transmission from Earth. Secretary General Chun appeared on screen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood other humans in uniforms Korthik didn't recognize, and through the windows of their command center, he could see space filled with stars that seemed somehow brighter than before. "Admiral," Chun said calmly, "I'd like you to meet the first of humanity's Titan-class vessels. The Ragnarok represents 6 months of very focused engineering effort. We built it specifically for visitors like yourself." "Built it where?" Korthik demanded. "Our surveillance showed construction in the asteroid belt, but nothing that could produce a ship of that size. You watched us build the factories, Admiral. The Ragnarok itself was constructed inside Jupiter's upper atmosphere. We've been using the gas giant as both a raw material source and a construction site. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you think on a planetary scale." The massive black ship continued its approach, now clearly visible to the naked eye despite the vast distances involved. Korthik's fleet, which had seemed overwhelmingly powerful just minutes before, suddenly felt very small and fragile. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the alien vessel is taking up position directly ahead of us. Range, 1 million kilometers and closing. All ships, battle stations," Korthik ordered. "Charge main batteries and prepare to engage." "Admiral." Chun's voice came through the speakers, still maddeningly calm. "Before you do something you might regret, let me ask you a question. How many species in your confederation have ever told you no and had the power to make it stick?" Korthik felt sweat beating on his carapace despite the bridge's climate controls. "None," he admitted. "Then perhaps it's time you learned what that feels like," the human replied. "We tried to say no politely 6 months ago. We gave you time to walk away and forget you ever found us. But you chose to come here with enough firepower to destroy our world. So now we're going to show you exactly why that was a mistake." The communication ended for the final time. Ahead of the Confederation fleet, the impossible ship called Ragnarok waited in the darkness, its black hull drinking starlight like a hungry void. And for the first time in his long military career, Admiral Korthik began to wonder if bringing the largest battle fleet in Confederation history to this distant yellow star had been the worst decision he would ever make. Admiral Korthik stared at the massive human ship hanging in space before his fleet. The Ragnarok was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its black hull seemed to swallow light, making it difficult to judge its exact size and shape. But the energy readings coming from that vessel made his most sensitive instruments scream warnings. "All ships, maintain formation," he ordered. "Open a channel to the human vessel." The communication system crackled to life. "This is Admiral Korthik of the Galactic Confederation Navy, commanding the Enforcement Fleet Eternal Dominion. Unknown vessel, you are hereby ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a new voice came through the speakers. This wasn't Secretary General Chun. This voice was younger, female, and carried an edge of barely controlled excitement. Admiral Korthik, this is Captain Sarah Martinez, commanding officer of the Use Ragnarok. Your surrender demand has been noted and rejected. We suggest you turn your ships around and leave this system immediately. Captain Martinez, Korthik replied, trying to keep his voice steady. You are facing the combined might of 15 dreadnoughts, 50 heavy cruisers, and 200 escort vessels. Your single ship, no matter how large, cannot hope to match our firepower. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender. A sound came through the speakers that it took Korthik a moment to identify. The human was laughing. Admiral, Captain Martinez said when her laughter subsided, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're counting ships and guns and thinking about traditional naval warfare. We stopped thinking that way a long time ago. Would you like a demonstration of what human military engineering can actually accomplish? Sir, Korthik's tactical officer interrupted. I'm detecting massive energy buildup throughout the enemy vessel. Whatever they're planning, it's big. Korthik felt his confidence begin to crack. The humans had shown too much certainty, too much calm in the face of overwhelming odds. Either they were completely insane or they knew something he didn't. All ships, he commanded. Open fire. Full spread. Maximum power. I want that vessel disabled, not destroyed. We need to study their technology. The space around Korthik's fleet erupted in light as hundreds of energy weapons fired simultaneously. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and fusion warheads converged on the human ship in a display of destructive power that could have cracked a small moon. The weapons struck the Ragnarok's hull and simply vanished. Impossible. Korthik's science officer breathed. Sir, the enemy vessel isn't even showing shield activity. Their hull is somehow absorbing all incoming energy and converting it directly to power. On the main screen, the black ship seemed to glow faintly as it drank the Confederation's attack. Then it began to move, not toward them, but in a slow, deliberate circle around the enemy fleet. Captain Martinez, Korthik called desperately. How are you doing this? No material can absorb that level of energy without overloading. No material, the human replied cheerfully. Admiral, you've been thinking too small. You build ships out of metal and ceramic. We build ships out of principles. The Ragnarok isn't just constructed from advanced materials. It's constructed from advanced ideas. As if to emphasize her point, the massive vessel began releasing what looked like glittering dust from thousands of ports along its hull. The sparkles spread out in all directions, forming a slowly expanding cloud that drifted toward the Confederation ships. Sir, his sensor operator reported, I'm detecting massive numbers of extremely small objects in that cloud. Microscopic level. Millions of them per cubic meter. Debris from our attack? Korthik asked hopefully. Negative, sir. These objects are artificial. They appear to be some kind of machines. And, sir, they're self-replicating. The first destroyer to encounter the glittering cloud was the Sword of Justice. Captain Yuthmer's frantic transmission came through the fleet communication network just as his ship's hull began to change color. Admiral, we're being invaded. Something is eating our hull plating? The entire outer armor is being converted into I don't know what, but it's spreading fast. On Korthik's tactical display, the Sword of Justice's energy signature began to fluctuate wildly. Sections of the ship's hull were simply disappearing, being broken down at the molecular level and rebuilt into something else. Something that looked suspiciously like more of the glittering machines. All ships, emergency reverse. Korthik screamed. Get clear of that cloud. But it was too late. The microscopic machines had already reached a dozen more vessels. Wherever they touched, solid metal became raw material for their reproduction. They didn't just destroy the ships they encountered. They converted them into more of themselves, using the mass and energy of Confederation vessels to grow their numbers exponentially. Captain Martinez, Korthik's voice cracked as he watched his mighty fleet being systematically disassembled. "What have you done?" "We've introduced you to human military doctrine, Admiral," came the calm reply. "We don't just build weapons. We build concepts. Those nanoscale machines you're experiencing right now, they're programmed with a very simple idea. Everything in this space belongs to us now. Your ships, your weapons, even the metal in your hulls. All of it is just raw material waiting to be put to better use." The heavy cruiser Nago Vigilance was the next to fall. Its captain's final transmission was a warning that would haunt Korthik for the rest of his life. They're not just destroying us. They're turning us into them. The hull material is becoming some kind of computational matrix. The whole ship is being converted into a thinking machine. "Sir," Korthik's navigation officer said urgently, "we need to retreat. Now. The cloud is expanding faster than our ships can move." But Admiral Korthik couldn't move. He stood frozen on his bridge, watching 300 years of Confederation naval supremacy crumble in real time. Ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds were being reduced to their component atoms and rebuilt as extensions of human will. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No species develops this level of technology in 6 months. It takes millennia to master matter conversion on this scale." Captain Martinez's voice came through the speakers one final time, and now it carried a note of something that might have been pity. "Admiral, that's where you're wrong. We didn't develop this technology in 6 months. We've been working on it for over 1,000 years, ever since we first detected your expansion wave moving toward our sector of the galaxy. We've been preparing for this moment since before your species achieved spaceflight." The communication shifted, and Secretary General Chun's voice replaced the captain's. "We tried to tell you politely that we weren't interested in joining your confederation. We gave you 6 months to reconsider your position. But you came anyway, with enough firepower to destroy our entire civilization. So now we're going to make sure this never happens again." On the tactical display, more than half of Korthik's fleet was gone. The remaining ships were retreating in full panic. But the cloud of nanoscale machines was still expanding, still converting everything it touched into more of itself. "All ships," Korthik ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "Emergency jump to hyperspace. Abandon all vessels that can't achieve minimum jump velocity. Send a message to Confederation Command. The humans are not what they appear to be. They're something else entirely. Something we've never encountered before." As his flagship prepared for the jump to safety, Korthik took one last look at the impossible human vessel. The Ragnarok hung motionless in space, surrounded by a growing cloud of its own microscopic children, calmly consuming the scattered remains of the most powerful fleet in Confederation history. The jump to hyperspace felt like an escape from a nightmare. But even as the stars shifted around him, Admiral Korthik knew that the nightmare was just beginning. Somewhere behind him, the humans were converting his former fleet into something new. Something that would carry a message to every species in the galaxy that the age of easy conquest was over. Admiral Korthik's final transmission reached Confederation High Command 72 hours after his fleet entered hyperspace. The message was brief, desperate, and according to most analysts, completely impossible. Emergency Code Black. Request immediate evacuation of all Confederation personnel from sectors adjacent to Sol System. Human military capabilities exceed all previous estimates by several orders of magnitude. Recommend immediate cessation of integration. Attempts and establishment of secure perimeter at minimum distance of 50 light years. The transmission ended there. No detailed report. No tactical analysis. Just a broken admiral begging his superiors to run away from a species that barely had fusion technology 6 months earlier. Chancellor Vorth and read the message 3 times before calling an emergency session of the High Council. The massive chamber on the Confederation capital world of Nexus Prime, filled with representatives from 847 different species, all demanding explanations for what many were calling the greatest military disaster in galactic history. The reports must be fabricated, declared Councillor Zethmar of the Hegemony. No species advances from primitive fusion drives to matter manipulation technology in half a year. It's physically impossible. The survivors' testimonies are consistent, replied Director Yithanal of Military Intelligence. Over 50 ship commanders reported identical phenomena. Ships being disassembled at the molecular level by self-replicating machines. Energy weapons being absorbed and converted to power. Technology that operates on principles we don't understand. Combat stress, insisted Councillor Krelter. Mass hallucination brought on by unexpected resistance. It happens sometimes when fleets encounter something outside their experience. Director Yithanal activated the main holographic display. 3-dimensional recordings from the survivor ships appeared in the center of the chamber. The images showed Confederation vessels being consumed by clouds of glittering dust, their hulls dissolving like sugar in acid. These are sensor recordings, not eyewitness accounts, she said firmly. The humans demonstrated technology that turns our understanding of physics on its head. And according to long-range observations, they're just getting started. The display shifted to show new intelligence from deep space telescopes. The Sol system blazed with energy signatures that made even the most advanced Confederation shipyards look primitive by comparison. Something was happening to Jupiter itself. The gas giant is being systematically converted, Director Yithanal explained. The humans are harvesting its mass and turning it into some kind of massive industrial complex. Current estimates suggest they're extracting materials equivalent to a dozen metal-rich worlds every day. The council chamber fell silent. Converting an entire gas giant into industrial capacity was the kind of mega project that took the Confederation centuries to complete, even with the resources of hundreds of worlds. How is this possible? Chancellor Vorthan asked quietly. We don't know, the intelligence director admitted. But we're detecting new energy signatures appearing throughout the Sol system almost daily. Each one corresponds to what appears to be another massive vessel, similar in scale to the one that destroyed Admiral Korthik's fleet. The political implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If the humans could produce ships like the Ragnarok on an industrial scale, they represented a threat unlike anything the Confederation had ever faced. Sir, a junior analyst interrupted. We're receiving a new transmission from Sol System. Put it through, the Chancellor ordered. The main display flickered, and Secretary General Chun appeared before the assembled council. The human looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just completed a difficult but necessary task. Greetings, Chancellor Vorth and the members of the High Council, Chun said, somehow knowing exactly who he was addressing despite never having met any of them. I wanted to personally follow up on recent events in our system. Secretary General Chun. Chancellor Vortham replied carefully. We are concerned about the reports we've received regarding Admiral Korthik's fleet. I'm sure you are, the human replied. Let me be direct, Chancellor. Your Admiral came to our system with enough firepower to sterilize our planet. He demanded our unconditional surrender and threatened to use force when we declined. We responded appropriately. Appropriately? Councillor Zethmar sputtered. You destroyed over 200 ships. Thousands of lives were lost. Chun's expression hardened. Actually, Councillor, we were very careful to minimize casualties. Most of your crews were rescued by our recovery teams before their ships were fully converted. They're currently enjoying the hospitality of our medical facilities while we determine how to safely return them to Confederation space. The human paused, letting that sink in. He had somehow rescued the crews from ships being disassembled at the molecular level. But let's talk about the real issue here, Chun continued. For thousands of years, your Confederation has maintained power through a simple principle: join us or be destroyed. No species has ever been strong enough to offer a third option. Until now, what are you proposing? Chancellor Vorthan asked. Nothing, Chum replied. We're not proposing anything. We're not interested in conquest, expansion, or galactic domination. We just want to be left alone. The question is whether your organization can accept the existence of a species that doesn't. Want to join your club and has the power to enforce that choice. Director. Euthal activated her personal communicator. Secretary General, our deep space observations suggest you're constructing additional vessels similar to the one that engaged our fleet. Is that accurate? Chum smiled. Very accurate, Director. We currently have 17 Titan-class vessels operational, with 3 more coming online every week. Each one represents a different approach to the problems of interstellar warfare. The Ragnarok was just our opening statement. 17 ships like the one that had effortlessly destroyed the Confederation's largest fleet, with more being built constantly. The council chamber erupted in whispered conversations as representatives tried to process the implications. Furthermore, Chum continued, we've been in contact with several of your member species. Apparently, not all of them joined the Confederation as willingly as your official history suggests. Some are quite interested in learning about alternatives to membership. The political earthquake that statement caused nearly brought down the chamber's ceiling. Member species talking directly to the humans? Outside official Confederation channels. It was unprecedented. You're trying to destabilize our entire civilization, Councillor Krelter accused. No, Chun replied calmly. We're offering choice. Something your Confederation has never provided. Species can remain members if they want to, or they can explore other options. The difference is that now they actually have other options. Chancellor Vorthan felt the weight of 10,000 years of galactic history pressing down on his shoulders. The Confederation had never faced a challenge like this. A species with the technological power to defend itself and the political sophistication to offer alternatives to Confederation membership. What do you want from us? He asked finally. Recognition, Chun replied. Acknowledge that Sol System is sovereign human space. Agree to stay at least 10 light years away from our borders. Establish formal diplomatic relations with any member species that request them. And stop trying to integrate species by force. And if we refuse? The human's expression grew cold. Then we'll stop being polite about protecting ourselves. The Ragnarok and her sisters are powerful, but they're just the beginning of what human engineering can accomplish when properly motivated. Do you really want to find out what our weapons look like when we stop holding back? The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Outside the great windows, the lights of Nexus Prime twinkled peacefully. Unaware that the galaxy had just changed forever, for the first time in Confederation history, they had encountered a species that could say no and make it stick. The age of unquestioned expansion was over, and in the darkness between the stars, other species began to whisper among themselves about the humans who had turned enemy weapons into their own power, who rescued the crews from ships they were destroying, and who offered something the galaxy had forgotten existed. They offered choice. The emergency council session had been running for 6 days straight. Chancellor Vorthan looked around the great chamber at representatives from 847 different worlds. all arguing about what to do with the humans. Some called for immediate war. Others demanded immediate surrender. Most simply sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how their entire worldview had collapsed in less than a week. The Terran Protectorate has formally requested permission to establish direct diplomatic contact with Sol System, announced Deputy Chancellor Kralvin. They cite historical precedent clause 7 alpha regarding independent consultation with non-member civilizations. Absolutely not, declared Councillor Zethmar. If we allow one species to negotiate separately with the humans, others will follow. The entire foundation of Confederation unity will crumble. With respect, Councillor, replied Ambassador Y. Tehailan of the Terran Protectorate, that foundation has already crumbled. The humans have demonstrated that Confederation membership is no longer mandatory for survival. We're simply acknowledging reality. Chancellor Vorthen rubbed his temples with all 4 hands. The Terrans weren't the only species making such requests. In the past week, over 100 member species had formally petitioned for permission to open independent communications with humanity. The dam was breaking. Sir, his aide whispered, we're receiving a priority transmission from Sol System. The chamber fell silent as the main display activated. Secretary General Chen appeared, but he looked different now. More confident, if that was possible. Behind him, through the windows of his command center, strange lights moved across what appeared to be a massive construction site in space. Chancellor Vorthen, members of the High Council, Chen said formally, I wanted to personally update you on recent developments in our system. Secretary General, the Chancellor replied carefully, we appreciate your communication. The Council has been discussing your previous message. Chen smiled. I'm sure you have. Let me save you some time. We've been monitoring Confederation communication networks for the past week. We know about the requests for direct diplomatic contact. We know about the political crisis you're facing. And we want you to know that we approve. The chamber erupted in voices as representatives shouted questions and protests simultaneously. Chen waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. We've decided to formalize our position regarding galactic politics. Effective immediately, Sol System recognizes the sovereign right of any sapient species to determine its own political allegiances. We will establish diplomatic relations with any civilization that requests them, regardless of their current Confederation status. You can't simply ignore our authority. Councillor Kralter protested. The Confederation has maintained galactic order for 10,000 years, and you're welcome to continue maintaining that order. Chen replied pleasantly, for any species that chooses to remain under your authority. But you no longer have a monopoly on interstellar politics. Other options now exist. Director Yithanold of Military Intelligence leaned forward. Secretary General, our intelligence suggests you've been expanding your capabilities since Admiral Korthik's visit. Can you confirm this? The view behind Chen shifted, showing the construction site more clearly. What looked like a small moon was taking shape in the void, its surface covered with industrial facilities that dwarfed anything in Confederation space. We've been busy, Chen admitted. The encounter with your fleet taught us that we need to be prepared for future disagreements. Jupiter conversion is proceeding ahead of schedule, and we now have 47 Titan-class vessels operational. 47. The number hit the Council like a physical blow, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. However, Chen continued, I want to stress that these ships are purely defensive in nature. We have no interest in conquest or expansion. We're building them to ensure that no one ever again threatens our right to self-determination. What about the species requesting diplomatic contact? Ambassador Ethalan asked. Will you honor those requests? We already have, Chun replied. As of this morning, we've established formal diplomatic relations with 37 different civilizations. Trade agreements are being negotiated. Cultural exchange programs are being planned. Several species have requested access to our educational institutions. The political implications were staggering. 37 species conducting independent diplomacy outside Confederation oversight. It was unprecedented in galactic history. We're also pleased to announce, Chun continued, that we'll be hosting the first Interspecies Independence Conference next month at our new diplomatic station. Any civilization interested in exploring alternatives to traditional power structures is welcome to attend. Chancellor Vorthen felt the last vestiges of traditional galactic order slipping through his fingers. What are you trying to accomplish, Secretary General? What's your endgame? Chun's expression grew serious. Chancellor, we're not trying to destroy the Confederation. We're trying to improve it. For 10,000 years, your organization has maintained peace through strength and fear. Join or be conquered. Submit or be destroyed. That model worked when you were the only game in the galaxy. But now there's an alternative. Species can choose independence if they're willing to defend it. They can form new alliances based on mutual interest rather than mutual fear. They can explore different approaches to interstellar cooperation. The display shifted to show another view of Sol System. Dozens of massive ships moved between industrial platforms that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. It was a sight that redefined what was possible in terms of stellar engineering. The galaxy is changing, Chun said quietly. The question is whether the Confederation will change with it or cling to outdated methods until it becomes irrelevant. Are you threatening us? Counselor Zethmar demanded. Chun laughed, but there was no humor in it. Counselor, if we wanted to threaten you, we'd do something like this. The lights in the council chamber flickered. Every electronic device in the building went silent for exactly 10 seconds. When they returned to normal operation, a new image appeared on every screen in the building. Simultaneously dotted showed the newest Titan-class vessel, just completed in the converted Jupiter shipyards. Unlike the others, this ship seemed to be alive. Its hull rippled with organic patterns that moved like slow breathing. Biomechanical tendrils extended from its surface, each one the size of a battleship. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. We call her the Prometheus, Chun said softly. She's not built from metal and ceramic like your ships. She's grown from engineered biological systems that we've been developing for centuries. She thinks. She learns. She adapts. And she's just the beginning of what's possible when you stop thinking of ships as tools and start thinking of them as partners. The image faded, leaving the council in absolute silence. That wasn't a threat, Chung continued. That was a demonstration. We could have disabled every system on Nexus Prime permanently if we'd wanted to. We could have shut down your communication networks, your defense grids, your life support systems. We didn't, because we don't want to conquer you. We want to coexist with you. Chancellor Vorthan found his voice. What do you want from us specifically? Acknowledgement, Chun replied simply. Recognize that the age of forced integration is over. Accept that some species will choose independence. Work with us to establish new frameworks for interstellar cooperation based on mutual respect rather than superior firepower. And if we refuse? Chun's smile was gentle, but carried an edge of absolute certainty. Then you'll become irrelevant. Species will continue to seek alternatives to Confederation membership. Trade will flow around your borders instead of through them. New alliances will form that don't include you. Eventually, you'll find yourselves governing a shrinking collection of worlds while the rest of the galaxy moves forward without you. The Secretary General leaned back in his chair. But I don't think it will come to that. The Confederation has survived for 10,000 years because it's capable of adaptation. This is just another adaptation. Instead of ruling through fear, you'll have to earn loyalty through competence. Instead of demanding submission, you'll have to offer value. It's a better system, he continued. More work for you, certainly, but better for everyone involved, including the Confederation. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in profound silence. Through the great windows, the lights of Nexus Prime continued their eternal dance, unaware that the galaxy they illuminated had just been fundamentally transformed. Chancellor Vorthan looked around the chamber at the faces of 847 different species, all trying to process what they had just witnessed. The humans had done something no conqueror had ever attempted. They had given their enemies a choice: submit to the new reality or become obsolete. It wasn't a threat. It was simply the truth. Outside, in the vast darkness between stars, the galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. For the first time in 10,000 years, the future was uncertain. And for many species who had never known anything but Confederation rule, that uncertainty felt like freedom. The humans had taught the galaxy a new language. The language of choice. The language of respect.